Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee. And who is going to be taking attendance?
That will be me, Lori. So I will do a roll call.
Thank you. Would you like to do a roll call?
Yes, please. Okay, Finance Committee Chair Scott.
Present.
Madam Board President Galbraith.
Present.
President Morgan.
Present.
Board Member Coleman.
Present.
And Board Member Cullen.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, the first order of business is to approve the prioritized agenda. And I will ask for a motion.
I move to approve the prioritized agenda.
And this is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I second.
All right, another roll call vote is in order here for approval of the prioritized agenda.
Okay, Finance Committee Chair Scott.
Yes.
Madam Board President Galbraith.
Okay.
Yes.
Hold on.
Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
And Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our next place of business is 2019-2020 FY fourth quarter cash balance report. And Arlene, you're ready, queued up here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to, give me a minute, I'm going to present. Does everyone see? Can everyone see the document? Awesome. Thumbs up.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, Dr. Cleveland. Oh, is Dr. Cleveland here? Members of the board. Before you is the 2019-20 last fiscal year's cash balance report. And what we're going to focus on is our operational fund, which is right here. Oh, it highlights all of them. So that's our 11,000 fund. And at the beginning of 2019, so the cash balance from the prior year was 19.1 million. The year-to-date revenue is 148 million, 148.2. And the expenses were 148.3, leaving us with the cash balance of 19.1. As you may remember, we projected that our cash balance would be 17 million, and that is what we included in this year's budget. So I think that's what the focus of this report is going to be on, is that we will then, after our audit is complete, which is, it's almost done actually, and usually around January, a cash balance bar for the additional 2.1 million. And I believe at this time, what I should do is turn it over to Mr. Baker, and he can talk about what he's proposing that we would be using that additional 2.1 million for.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board. So as you all know, this particular year is very unique, and there have been many expenses that have been unique to the year due to the pandemic. And so we want to ensure that we have sufficient cash balances in order to mitigate any type of new PED regulation or DOH regulation that they have essentially been placing on us in order to keep schools open. So although we probably have saved on certain expenditures, there are other items that we have expended on. Fortunately, we do have the CARES budget that has offset a lot of those purchases. I will get into specifically some of those purchases later in the evening when it comes to the HVAC filters and the Student Support Center. So although we don't have a projection on the entire 2.1, we certainly are not in a position really to budget that entire amount at this time.
Mike,
That's all I
where
have.
did we get the 2 million?
So for the most part, the majority of that additional revenue came from vacancy savings. And so what happened was, as we went into COVID, as we kind of pulled out of the schools, essentially, there were full expenses just didn't occur. And so our projection was off, and most of that was off due to vacancy savings.
Thank you.
Another large item, or a couple of large items, is, as you may remember, there was no more professional development that was occurring. So quite a bit of that budget stayed in the departments and, or was left over, I should say. And all activities were halted as well. So a large portion of the budget goes to travel, student travel, and also vacancy savings. But those are the largest ones that I can think of that we did not spend due to COVID. So when you continue to look at this report, this will go over every single fund. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Go over every fund that the district has. And I won't focus on any one individually, since we have a lot of information that we have to go through this afternoon. But I do want to go through to page 2 and 3. You will see large negative numbers. And I want to point out that that is because these are, most of them are federal or state flow through funds that we get reimbursed for from the state. So we front the money, and we don't always get, when we submit the request for reimbursement, we don't always get the funds back right away within the same year. So that's what causes those negative accounts. So, and even into the capital outlay, SB9, those, this capital outlay 31400, the same pertains to that one. And then down to the last page is where we balance our bank statements right here with the actual funds. So unfortunately, we were off by 3 cents, as you can see right over here. But other than that, we're in very good financial condition. So I am open for any questions on this. If not, we will move to the next item.
There are no questions. Does anyone have a question? Any questions? If not, then Arlene, go ahead and move forward then to B, the 2021 FY first quarter financial report.
Okay. This is our first quarter financial report ending September 2020. And again, the district is in very good financial condition. Normally, in a normal year, I want to point out that our percent use should be approximately 25%. And so since, you know, the kids didn't return to school, I believe that's why our expenses are down. And by the next quarter also, I want to point out here that we have not encumbered all of our compensation and benefits yet. That's usually done in October of every year. So by the next quarter report, you will, this report will reflect the encumbrances for all salaries and benefits as well. I'm open for any questions on this report.
Anybody have a question?
So this is Catherine Cullen. So you're saying that over on the percentage use, all of those should be around 25% at this time? Is that what?
In a normal year,
Yeah.
it's usually about 25%.
Okay, so all of those. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay, so then we will move to the next report. And again, we are still talking about the first quarter. This is the detail of the last summary report. So as you can see here, our revenue, we're at just about 25%. So we're on track for our revenue. It's our expenditures that, as you saw in the other report, that the percentage is down a little bit. And so to go into more detail, this report just goes into detail by function. And just to remind you, I'm going to jump down to the bottom, but I have a reminder down at the bottom regarding the functions and the name and the description for your assistance in being able to understand this very large report. So here's all of the detail regarding the expenses so far for the first quarter of this year. Is there any questions?
Arlene, how does this compare to last year?
I'm sorry?
How does this compare to last year at this time?
We're on target for revenue, as I said before. Our expenses are down. We're usually at 25%, around 25% for all of our expenses. But I believe that since, of course, we're in unsettled times now, and we've just been in school, back in school for what, a month now or so, that our expenses are down.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a quick question. So do we think that so say our high school and our middle school starts to go back in, so right now we're doing pretty well. Do we think we're going to have more? I mean, of course, everything's going to go up more, but I mean, do you think we'll still be looking like pretty good for our outlook for next semester? Or are we going to be spending a lot more than we normally would? What are you guys kind of projecting as far as when our high school and middle school goes back in?
I don't see that we will be spending more than normal. We're on track. I feel that, me personally, that the longer the middle and high schools are out, or I should say just on virtual learning, there's not going to be as many expenses. So we may have a supplement towards the end of the year, and that's something we're going to have to keep watching, as we did when we first went, when there was COVID in March. That seemed to be when most of the spending stopped.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because we've been spending a lot more than we normally would in some places, but it's good to see that things are still looking really good despite that.
I think that there's a couple of things that the board should know. One of them is, and I really agree with Arlene, you know, what she's saying, it's pretty much a balance. Our utilities are down in the buildings, but we've had other costs that are up because of the remote learning. And so it's probably a little of both. We have been told by the Deputy Secretary of Operations for the state that we could be looking at 1 or 2 reductions in the unit value still this year. So the fact that we've been very careful is you know, extremely important. And as the board knows, you know, it's kind of a difficult situation, because when you start getting a lot of cash, the state starts looking enviously at that money. So that balance of getting the things you need to have is really important, as opposed to, you know, not buying the things you absolutely need to have. On the other hand, it's always a little frightening, because in your own personal life, you can put that money aside, nobody will touch it. In the state, that's a whole different situation. So you're trying to balance whether you want to save so much they might take it all, or how much do we need to save back if, in fact, we have another reduction in the unit value a little later in the year. So if there ever was a time that there needs to be a crystal ball, this is it. But unfortunately, we haven't found that crystal ball yet, and we really don't know exactly what it is going to look like. And my last comment is, I'm sure you are aware, the initial state projections for revenue were pretty grim. We're not there as a state. The state's come back more economically than they thought it would, but it's certainly not back to where it was a year ago. So just a couple of thoughts in terms of big picture.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Arlene, do you have anything more to add?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Are there any more questions from any of the board members? Okay, then I guess we move on to Student Support Center budget. Mike Baker.
Oh, good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. So as you recall, our last meeting, we had an award on the contract for the Student Support Center. So we did a number of months ago purchase the facility essentially on the corner of 528 and Northern Boulevard. We originally established a renovation budget of approximately $1.7 million. Just want to go over some of those, the entire cost, not just the construction costs, but also furniture and equipment costs as well. So in the first column, you'll see that the building construction cost from the lowest bidder came out at approximately $1.3 million. On top of that, we are going to run fiber optic to that building to make sure that we have the appropriate internet connections. And the fiber work is in regard to the entire cabling is approximately $258,000. And then you'll see an itemized list of consultant, geotech, and contingency budget. And then lastly, we had an alternative repaving of a bus lane that came in at 155, but 167 with tax. So that entire renovation budget is a little bit over 1.8 million. We did budget 1.7. I was surprised that the numbers came out higher than we anticipated. Originally, I thought I had sufficient revenue in that. And what happened was our roofing costs and our HVAC costs were much higher than we anticipated. And we believe, because of the COVID environment, that these particular construction costs, especially HVAC, really has increased over the last several months. So we have a difference of approximately $135,000. We plan on making up the difference in our SB9. We had a project, fencing projects that came in under budget of approximately 100,000. So that 135 can fairly easily be made up with our SB9 budget. But also to document the additional costs of the building, one of the things that we elected to do in this facility, unlike other facilities, is have module partitions. So in the core, for the most part, in the core of the building, we have hard walls, such as those walls that have plumbing, for example. But the way we want to set up the classrooms, they will be a module system. This way, in the future, when the needs of that center changes and the population of the center increases, we can move those particular partitions around at reduced costs. So, and you can see that there's an acronym DIRT, which essentially means the movable partitions. That's just under $500,000. Other furniture came in at approximately $60,000, and the IT equipment is about $100,000. And so essentially the furniture is just under $660,000. So we have a grand total budget, renovation costs to include an alternate that we bid on, also to include the movable partitions, the furniture, IT equipment. The grand total is just under $2.5 million. So we feel good about this project. We would like to move forward. I believe later on this evening, the board will take a look at approving the RFP on construction, and those construction bids came out fairly good. Like I said, a little bit high on the HVAC and the roofing. But between the construction costs, using operational funds, using SB9 money, we will be able to provide for this project. So I stand for questions at this time.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. My first question is why the IT network is so expensive. Isn't the fiber right outside the building? That, as I understand it, the main fiber trunk line runs right down the front of that building.
Yes, this includes not just the fiber, but also the entire cabling of the building. And so I believe the fiber, fiber is very expensive. I don't have well, I don't have the breakdown right in front of me. But the fiber itself, I think there was two aspects of the fiber that came in approximately 120,000. The rest of it was inside the building.
Yeah, that just, wow, that just seems so high to me. I'd like to see the breakdown, Mike, if you get a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I
I'd
will
like to
send that.
The second question I have was on the new maneuverable or movable partitions. What are they made out of?
I think a combination of steel and fabric, much like you'll see the shorter systems furniture in our facilities. It's
Okay.
essentially it looks pretty much the same, but mostly steel, um, reinforced steel with fabric on the outside. Some of it that I've seen also you could incorporate windows, doorways, and other things.
Okay, and what is the IT equipment? Is that computers?
Yeah, IT equipment are their computers, smart boards, the electronics, most of it that goes inside the classroom.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, Wynn, you're next.
So, would you please tell me then how much over is this project total? Because in my head, I was thinking the 1.7 million, but I'm seeing the additional cost. And based on what's been in Google Drive, I just would like to know kind of what we budgeted versus what we're seeing here and how much over we are.
Yeah, so what we did, so if you look at, we originally did not budget for the bus lane. So that's an addition to the original project. Okay, the other thing that we have added to the project is the movable partitions. So that's about 500,000. Now, if we were to take out the movable partitions, then we would put hard partitions in its place, and that would likely, that would increase the building construction. So to give you an actual definite number, it would be difficult, but essentially, we have been told that the movable partitions, the cost is comparable. My sense is that it's actually more expensive. Those things usually are than sheetrock and walls. So instead of 500,000, the partitions I think would be, the actual hard partitions would be less than that.
Okay.
So in regard to the addition, I think you could take a look at the difference, the 135 minus the 167, which would give you, let's just say, a plus of about 32,000. We added the movable partitions, and we've also added the furniture and the IT equipment. So there's a couple of ways that you can look at it. One way is that you can say that original budget was 1.7, which was really meant to be, and the reason why I put the fund over there in the right column was the 1.7 really was meant to be construction costs. And then the equipment, typically the equipment comes out of student support, which is a 2,000 function. So what we've really added to the project, I think, is two things. One is the bus lane at 167, and then the movable partitions at approximately 500,000. I think if you would take those out of the budget, I think essentially we would be pretty close to being on budget. Because of, and the reason why I added those items is because of our additional cash. We thought that spending the money up front now, while we have the cash, would help us in the future with this particular building. So I really thought putting the movable partitions in the budget, I thought it would be a good financial move for the district at this time.
Okay, and so the 167,000 is painting a bus lane. Did I hear you right?
No, I'm sorry, paving.
Paving, and I said painting.
Sorry, yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
all paint for $167,000.
Sure.
So I do want to, I think what has been, and I have been, and as everybody knows, just a little concerned about the Student Services Center or Student Support Center. My concern is that this is about 40-some% higher than what was budgeted. And I understand that there are areas where we have extra, but I do know that it's 40+% higher than what we budgeted. But I can't help but wonder, knowing the circumstances for independence and how those classes are divided up, seeing that we're putting $500,000 in for dividable or movable partitions when they're so lacking at independence. And so I guess my question is if we're spending this much for this building to do that, what are we going to do to address the layout of independence?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So originally we did budget. We did budget for, I forgot the exact amount, but I think it was approximately 750,000 for renovation work at Independence. The problem that we're having is converting those funds into 4,000 money. So we are trying to get the PED to kind of, how can I say this? They are reluctant to use operational money for construction costs. And so we were fortunate to be able to get them to approve the 1.7 million for the Student Support Center. But they were very reluctant to do that. I think they probably did it because it was really an at-risk population. So what we would have to do is we would have to go back to PED and request approval of funding to be transferred from 2,000 funds to 4,000 funds. And that really is our only issue.
Okay, so my concern is that is what definition where this is coming from for at risk, because Independence as an alternative high school, in my opinion, based on knowing the student population, that is exactly what they are at-risk students. And so what I'd like to really see is the effort put into being able to do something for a school that's been in existence versus creating this new one. If we're doing this and then not addressing the needs I believe that they have or that they've requested, So I'd like to see if there's a way that we can really move forward with this, because you're talking about, students that credit recovery, teen moms. I mean, those are at-risk students also. And so to not be looking out for them has me concerned about what we're spending for this right now.
I don't disagree at all. Again, it's not about the funding. It's about how we spend that funding. And I know Dr. Cleveland brought this up in her superintendent's meetings with the board. I was on the LFC meeting as well. And one of the things that we proposed was making it easier for districts to use operational funds for renovation work. And so your point is well taken. I totally agree. And I think what we could do potentially moving forward is try again with PED and see if they would be willing to allow us to do that project.
So then how can the board support that? I mean, what can the board do to support you all? I don't want to just pass the buck on this, but it is something that I think is very important that needs to be addressed. And so instead of just saying, go to it, how can the board support, or what can we do?
I think what we need to do is we need to, again, go back to PED, write up our request, and if they deny it, then come back to the board. It is possible. It is possible that they would approve it.
It's possible that they've been so opposed to that, and I will tell you where the history of that came from. It came from districts that were saving large amounts of operational money to build football stadiums or to do other things and then coming back to the state and saying, well, we don't have enough money for our classrooms. So it didn't have to do with things like what Mike's talking about, was improving a facility for an academic purpose, or putting money into a facility that would enhance instructional program options for kids. So when they came down saying no more of that, it came exactly from what they perceived to be non-instructional uses. And so one of the things we argued last year was, if this building is strictly for academic purposes, and we have an academic mission and goal behind it, will you make an exception for that? And they said no. So, but we found another way to do it, if you'll recall. We shifted some money and put the money into the renovations, and some things that we actually could use the money correctly for. To your point, we go back to PED, but then if not, my suggestion is we take it to our legislative delegation, because I think they would be the ones that would be in a position to put something out in terms of statutory relief for that, and giving us more flexibility, and even, more than just one thing, this one thing. What probably is more important is to ask for more flexibility during this year, period, because nothing is the same, nothing is normal. And so all of the regular rules just don't really apply this year. And if boards could be given that freedom and flexibility, then I don't believe the money will be misspent at all. I think it will be used in each individual district based on the needs that that district has. So while we have this need and would like flexibility here, I know there are other districts that have needs that are completely different, but equally important and equally valuable. So I think we start with the public ed department. And if that's not the case, then we start with our own delegation, working with LFC and LESC to try to gain that flexibility. But I think going for the broader goal of letting each district have that flexibility is maybe easier sell than one specific thing. But if we could do the one specific request, it would be better, my estimation, is to ask for flexibility during this year to let the board have more to say over how money is being spent.
Thank you.
Well, let's see if we can bring this back then Kath, when your request is that we go before PED with with the improvements to the Independence School, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct. And
All right.
yeah.
All right. And so that will be an action item then that Mr. Baker, you will take on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any
Thank
more
you very
questions?
much.
Are there
No,
any more
thank you.
questions?
Yes,
Kath,
this is board member Catherine Cullen. So I was trying to go through the old documents. What I would like is when we're going through and referencing an old budget, be able to have that because the old one to reference. Because you have 1.7 million was the original construction budget. And of course, we've seen so much going on this year, so I can't quite recall. So I did go back and I was able to find this student support from November of 2019, that preliminary budget that we had. And is that where some of the figures are coming out? Or was there another one of the 1.7?
Well, I can tell you that the original budget changed several times, so I'm not really sure what you're looking at, but
Yeah.
it was mainly, yeah, that 1.7 really was really the construction budget.
Because back in November of 2019, when we first were discussing this, it was the total estimated cost was 3.933074. That was that included all the utilities, the teachers, classroom furniture, and then our reoccurring cost would be 633,074. But I couldn't find any of the other documents since then when it was presented. So that's why I was trying to figure out the total cost, because it seems like we've gone over than what we originally discussed back in 2019 considerably.
Catherine, I know, this is Noreen Scott. I know that we looked at a budget in the conference room after we were elected. If you recall, there was a meeting where we went over the drawings of the building, and there was a budget at that point in time. And
Yeah.
I think that may be the one where Mr. Baker is drawing from the 1.7.
And I think you're right. Unfortunately, when I went through board book, nothing seems to be uploaded, or maybe I'm missing it with this new board book, but I can't seem to find anything from finance committee previously uploaded that was presented.
I think that was a closed meeting is why, because it was a discussion about purchasing the building. And so that's probably why it's not in board book, is my guess.
But we should have.
Right.
You should have the full budget should be put in there for review, because that is public knowledge.
Yeah, I think it was a closed meeting where that came up. And so maybe that's why it's not easily, why it's not easily.
That is public that I can find here, because I mean, I'm finding a ton of different documents, but not because I'm just trying to figure out how much off when we first started this journey and where we're now. I mean, it's certainly, we've seen a lot of other costs added onto this, and we haven't even opened it up. And I do agree with Wynn. That's something that some of us board members have really struggled with is that you have Independence that has been needing work tremendously for years and years. And here we're spending millions of dollars on this facility, and it's, what is it going to service? About 150 to 200 students. So, I mean, where is the money coming from for, I know the SB 9 is going to be coming for let me go back to this, SB 9 for the difference of the 135, 581, but where is it for the other 659,012? That was from the student support money?
Yeah, so that will come out of our operational budget.
So
Again, I just want to reiterate. So what board member Coleman stated in regard to processing funding in our original budget, and I don't remember which version it was. I know Carl and I had a meeting with Dr. Carley. We went over the renovation. We established a renovation budget for the facility. One of the original 2021 budget, we had those figures in there. I could try to find it on my computer. But again, the difficulty wasn't about funding. It had to do with PED approval.
Mhm.
And so now we are kind of in a different environment. There is a possibility that PED, could change their opinion, and I'd be happy to draft a memorandum, send it to PED requesting that those funds get moved from 2,000 funding to 4,000 funding in order to provide renovation for Independence High. I mean, I totally agree.
So can I get, and I have one of you guys send me the latest budget that was presented to the board. The one that I have is November 2019, but that wasn't in a closed executive session because I can't find it.
Okay, can we hold on? Dr. Cleveland seems to want to cut in here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm not even looking at the screen. Thanks, Nora.
There's just a couple of things I wanted to mention is that really quickly, and I think this is a really good discussion. One of the things that we have had for a long time, the discussion with Dr. Carly, is that we did not want Independence to become just a place we sent every difficult child. It was not designed for that. It was designed to be a specialized program for students who would benefit from smaller class sizes and additional attention and all of those things. And so I think you all have a really positive feeling about Independence, and so do I. I think they've done great work there. One of the things that Dr. Curley has always been concerned about is putting students who really won't benefit there or who have issues that make it not a good place for them to be. And so my understanding with this center was that some of those young people would be able to go there and they would have a place to go. And when you think about all the things that we've heard the last couple of years from parents or some of the disruptions that we've had, whatever, is why isn't there a place? Why don't we have a safety net for some of these kids? And honestly, some of the kids that need the services there, Independence isn't the right place for them, and neither is the comprehensive until we can get those behaviors back under control. So I just wanted to kind of go back and kind of go back to the original discussion was who will be served in this building, and is there any other place in the district for these young people to be served and served effectively? And I think the conclusion that we came to was there wasn't. And there was a need for a place that's temporary, not a permanent solution. Whereas when we send our young people to Independence, that's not a temporary assignment at all. It's a school by choice, and that's where they've decided to go. So I just want to be sure we have that background a little bit in mind, and our conversations with several folks and mentioning earlier the delegation, certainly one member of the delegation who made a very eloquent plea for needing this kind of support for kids. And so I wanted to go back and kind of review the thinking behind the site. On that being said, is there more that needs to be done for Independence? Absolutely. And I think long-term, in every single respect, they're out of space. They need a much larger facility. We've done a lot of Band-Aids over time. And so we look at what needs to be done at Independence. It's much larger than that. But I know we've all had conversations back, Carl and others, about the need for a different facility for Independence at some point. So that need is very real, and I understand what you're saying. I do think, though, that all of the principals, all of the secondary principals, were in support of this center, not just one, but all four, and feeling very strongly that we needed to provide this in order to be able to continue the instructional program at their buildings. And so, I just wanted you to just kind of remind everyone this had the support of all four of the high school principals.
I would like us to be mindful of time. We've only got about 10 minutes before we have to get on the other call. So Wynn, if you have something you can quickly add.
Yes, I don't want to belabor it. I do want to acknowledge that I understand the importance of the students that will be served. And that being said, we also need to, and I think that it's important that we keep independence top of mind. I do want to put a request in when we go in and we look at Google Drive, having some way to compare what was versus what is, changes and think that have occurred, just so we can really be on the top of our game when it comes to our budget and our responsibilities. So it's hard to kind of go back looking at this and then seeing what was anticipated or what was expected and now seeing this amount. So if we can have the ability to get previous information included in on Google Drive also, that would be very helpful.
You know, real quick, right now we have our superintendent reports and they're all filed by months and dates and such. What if for our finance committee, I mean, we take these snapshot documents and they stick in those folders, Mike, where you can have like a PDF instead of a working document, we can have just like the PDFs that kind of stick in there, and we can kind of go back. That would that be something that would be easily able to be done?
Yeah, we will. We'll take a look at that. I understand what Board Member Coleman is talking about. So we'll revisit that issue, and then we'll come back to the Finance Committee and show you what we've done.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we're on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the HVAC filter cost projections.
Okay, Madam Chair, Dr. Cleveland. So as you know, PED has made additional requirements in regard to HVAC systems and increasing the filtration of those systems. Early on this summer, we ordered all what was called MERV 8 filters, and obviously when the number MERV 8 versus MERV 13, as the number goes up, it increases the filtration capacity. So originally PED said you need to have MERV 13 filters in all your HVAC units, but then they got backlash because most HVAC units throughout the state can't handle that type of capacity. So Facilities Department has been doing an analysis. Actually, it's been contracted out to an engineer to have all of our school sites as requested by PED to determine the highest level of filtration that those systems could take. That doesn't mean that what essentially was original for that system. So we have a variety of filtration numbers ranging from, most of our systems require a MERV 4. We have to upgrade those to MERV 9. And some of our systems actually have the upper limit, which is MERV 13. So typically the filters throughout the district, that will cost us, our last fiscal year cost us approximately $27,500. This year, our estimate in regard to filtration due to PED will be approximately $315,000. Now that depends on how long this pandemic is going to go on for. So the assumption is that it will go on for the rest of the fiscal year. If that occurs, our projection right now is $315,000. Most of that funding will be provided in the CARES money. If we start running out of CARES money, which is a possibility, then we will go into our cash reserves. So that is just a quick update on HVAC filtration projections, and I stand for questions.
Does anyone have a question specifically on that? Okay, then I guess we'll move on to the final item, which is the balanced budget summary discussion.
So the balanced budget summary. So if you look in the top left corner, the original budget that we submitted to PED and to the school board was just under, our SEG was just under $154 million. With other revenue and our cash carry, we had a total revenue of approximately 172 and a half. Expenditures essentially matched our revenue. In the, I think it's purple, where it says the 2021 adjusted budget. So what happened over the course of time was the original SEG was cut by approximately $7.3 million. We did apply for the extended learning program, which we did receive an award on. That increased our budget back up to approximately 6.9 million, which essentially put us almost where we started. And right now we are at approximately 153 and a half for total revenue, almost to match our original budget at 172. On the right side of the column, or the expenses, there was a reduction in salary from 4%, essentially down to 1%. And then we had an increase because of the extended learning program. And so salaries and benefits total approximately 140 million. The original department budgets was, excuse me, 34 million. We cut each department by 6% for a savings of approximately 1.3 million, which reduced that to 32 million. We had a savings in property and liability and workers' comp of approximately $626,000. That brought us down to approximately 32 million, where we need to have a decreasing bar of approximately $387,000. This way, our expenditures will match our revenue at approximately $172 million. So essentially, after the kind of the seesaw effect from PED, financially, we are back having a balanced budget. I stand for questions.
Does anyone have any questions? We have about 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, this is Arlene, and I just want to add that before you at the board meeting, you will see the SEG decreasing bar before you for 387,719.
Anybody with any questions?
So
All right, then I think, go ahead, Catherine, go ahead.
So, Michael, can you say again, what was the 387,719? What is exactly from that was coming from that is decreasing?
Yeah, so we're taking that from cash in order to balance the budget.
Okay, for the cash. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? With that, I think I'm going to call for adjournment so that we can reconnect to the next meeting. See you all in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.